He slapped her across the face once, sharp, final. The sound rang through the mansion like a verdict. Glass trembled. Silence fell. Only her wedding ring hit the marble floor with a soft metallic tap. "Give me the house key, Grace!" Ethan Miller barked, his eyes burning with pride and greed. "And the access code to the 10 million, you're too useless to manage it anyway." Those were the venomous words that tore through years of loyalty and love. Grace Miller stood frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief, her cheek marked red by the man she once called her protector. Her fingers trembled as she removed the keychain, the same one they'd bought together on their honeymoon, and placed it on the table between them. Instead of standing by her, Ethan chose humiliation. Instead of love, he offered shame. He believed she was broken, finished a woman stripped of power, money, and worth. He didn't know that sometimes the quietest souls carry the loudest storms within them. Grace walked out into the cold night barefoot, her tears falling onto the pavement like raindrops on stone. Behind her, Ethan laughed loud, triumphant, arrogant, certain that he had won. But fate has a way of humbling those who mock the kind-hearted. Because while Ethan believed he had taken everything from Grace, there was something he could never touch, something that would soon become the key to his downfall. He thought he'd locked her out of her own life. He didn't realize she was already steps ahead. Sometimes the slap meant to destroy a woman only awakens her strength. Sometimes the door you slam on someone's face becomes the one that closes behind your own downfall. This is not just another story of betrayal. It is the journey of a wife humiliated in front of the world, a husband blinded by pride, and the quiet revenge that unfolds not through anger, but through wisdom, patience, and grace itself. Dear viewers, thank you for joining this story. As we step this issue into Grace Miller's world, her fall, her silence, and her rise, I ask from my heart, don't just scroll past her pain. Subscribe now and tell us where you're watching from. Because tonight, you'll witness how quiet strength turns humiliation into history. The slap came first, loud, sharp, final. Grace Miller's head snapped to the side, her vision flashing white. For a moment, she couldn't even feel her face. The sound echoed through the marble hallway, bouncing off framed wedding photos that now felt like ghosts. "Give me the house key, Grace!" Ethan's voice thundered, his jaw tight with rage. "And the access code to the 10 million? I'm done watching you waste my life." Grace stumbled backward, her hand trembling as she touched the red mark on her cheek. "Ethan, please. It's just an argument. You don't have to." "Enough," he cut in, his tone cold and heavy. "You're nothing but a burden. I built this house. I earned every dollar in that account. You're lucky I even kept you this long." In the doorway, Sophia Lane leaned against the frame, tall, polished, and cruelly composed. Once, she had been Grace's friend, the one who laughed with her over dinner, who promised she'd always be around. Now she watched in silence, her lips curling slightly, a ring of satisfaction glinting in her eyes. Grace's chest heaved as tears welled. "You're choosing her? After everything I—" Ethan snatched her handbag from the counter and threw it toward her. "You're finished here. Go cry somewhere else." The words hit harder than the slap. She bent to pick up her bag, her fingers shaking as the brass house key slipped out and clattered on the floor. For years, that key had symbolized home warmth, safety, belonging. Now it lay there, cold and unwanted, just like her. "I gave up everything for you," she whispered, voice trembling. "I worked beside you, built your dream, stood by you when no one did. And now I don't need you," Ethan replied, stepping closer, his eyes burning with pride. "The world doesn't reward weakness. You never understood that." For a long second, Grace looked up at him, not as a wife, but as a stranger finally seeing truth. His face, once the place she found safety, now looked foreign, empty. Sophia's voice sliced the silence. "You should leave before you embarrass yourself more, Grace." Grace turned toward her, eyes glistening. "Embarrassment doesn't scare me anymore," she whispered softly. She reached for the key on the floor, looked at it one last time, and set it gently on the glass table between them. "You'll regret this, Ethan," she said quietly, not as a threat, but as a truth that would one day echo back to him. Ethan smirked, mistaking her calm for weakness. "You don't even have a place to sleep tonight," he said, brushing past her. "Now get out." Grace walked toward the door barefoot, her heart pounding like a drum inside her chest. The cool night air hit her face as she stepped outside, carrying nothing but her purse, her tears, and her silence. Behind her, the mansion lights glowed bright, but something in them flickered, like a warning that the brightness wouldn't last forever. As the gate slammed shut, Sophia's laugh floated into the night. But somewhere deep inside Grace, something shifted, quiet, powerful, and irreversible. And though no one could see it yet, the same night she was thrown out was the night a quiet storm began to move. Rain poured down like punishment from the heavens. Grace Miller stumbled down the driveway, her clothes clinging to her skin, her bare feet splashing through puddles as thunder cracked overhead. Behind her, Ethan's mansion, once their shared home, glowed like a cruel palace. "Get out and don't come back!" Ethan's voice roared one last time, echoing through the gate before it slammed shut with a metallic clang. The sound rang in her ears, the sound of an ending. She stopped by the sidewalk, shivering under the storm, gripping her bag as lightning flashed across the sky. And that's when she heard the whispers. From the porch across the street, Karen Lewis, the neighbor known for gossip louder than her perfume, peeked from under her umbrella. "Oh dear, is that Grace? What happened to her?" she murmured to another neighbor, her tones sharp with curiosity, not concern. "Did you hear? Ethan finally kicked her out," another voice answered. "They say she spent all his money. Poor man. Sophia's better for him anyway." Their words sliced through the rain, each one a stab in Grace's heart. She wanted to scream the truth that she had never wasted a dime, that she had loved Ethan with every piece of her being. But she couldn't. Her voice felt trapped behind the bruise swelling on her cheek. A car slowed beside her. The window rolled down, revealing Sophia Lane, dry and elegant in her silk dress. "You should have seen it coming, Grace," she said softly, feigning sympathy but dripping poison. "A man like Ethan doesn't need a weak wife. Maybe now you'll learn your place." Grace's fingers clenched her bag tighter. The rain blurred her vision, but not enough to hide Sophia's smirk. "Go home, Sophia," she said quietly, "before the storm hits you too." Sophia's smirk faltered for half a second, a flicker of confusion, before she drove off. Grace stood still, drenched, trembling, alone. The street felt endless. The whispers behind her grew louder, each one twisting the story, making her the villain in her own tragedy. "She must have done something awful," Karen said. "Men like Ethan don't just snap." Grace lowered her head and began walking again. Each step hurt, but there was a strange steadiness forming beneath the pain, the beginning of resolve. She reached a corner and stopped under a flickering streetlight. Her reflection shimmered faintly in a puddle, a woman she barely recognized. Her lip trembled, but her eyes hardened. "They can call me weak," she whispered to herself. "They'll see what strength looks like in silence." Just then, headlights cut through the rain. A car pulled over slowly. An older woman stepped out, holding an umbrella. Harriet Cole, a kind-faced landlady from the nearby apartments, rushed toward her. "Sweetheart, you'll catch your death out here," she said warmly. "Come inside, dear. You can stay with me tonight." Grace hesitated, pride whispered to keep walking, but exhaustion won. She nodded silently. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice breaking. Harriet smiled. "No need to thank me. Sometimes life pushes us out of one door so we can find another." Grace followed her into the dim apartment building, dripping water onto the worn carpet. For the first time that night, she felt a flicker of safety. But outside, behind the mansion's glowing windows, Ethan laughed with Sophia, a laugh that would soon turn into panic. Because what he didn't know was that the storm Grace walked into was the same one that would one day wash away his empire. The door slammed open as thunder cracked again. Harriet Cole pulled Grace inside, her frail but strong hands guiding her like a mother leading a lost child. The smell of old books and warm soup filled the narrow apartment. "Sit, dear," Harriet said gently. "You're shaking like a leaf." Grace tried to speak, but her voice came out as a sob. She sank onto the old sofa, water dripping from her hair onto the floor. Harriet handed her a towel and poured tea into a chipped cup. "You can stay here as long as you need," she said. "I don't ask questions, just drink this and breathe." But questions burned anyway. Grace's mind spun in chaos. How did it come to this? How did love turn to violence? How could Sophia stand there and watch? The weight of betrayal pressed on her chest until she could hardly breathe. She pressed the cup to her lips. The warmth calmed her trembling hands. Across from her, Harriet sat quietly, knitting in slow, rhythmic motions. The old woman didn't need to pry, she knew pain when she saw it. "You don't have to tell me now," she said softly. "But I can see you've lost something precious," Grace whispered. "I lost everything." Harriet looked up, her eyes kind but firm. "Then maybe what you lost wasn't meant to stay. Sometimes life takes what's heavy before it lets us rise." Before Grace could answer, a soft knock came at the door. Harriet frowned and stood. Who could that be at this hour? When she opened it, a tall woman in a dark raincoat stood under the flickering hallway light, her hair neat, her eyes sharp. "I'm Clara Reed, attorney," she said calmly. "I'm looking for Mrs. Grace Miller." Grace froze. "A lawyer?" Clara stepped inside, shaking off rain. "Your neighbor, Mrs. Lewis, called the police after she saw what happened outside the Miller estate. I was informed through a mutual contact, your late Uncle Robert's firm. I handled some of his estate years ago." Grace blinked, confused. "Uncle Robert? He passed years ago." I don't understand." Clara nodded. "I know, but he left certain protections in your name. Quiet clauses, safety nets, if ever you were wronged." Grace's voice trembled. "What kind of protections?" Clara smiled faintly. "Let's just say, I'm securing your safety. You don't have to worry about Ethan for now, but I'll need your signature on some forms tomorrow." Grace frowned. "I can't afford legal help. I have nothing." Clara's gaze softened. "You have more than you think. For tonight, rest. Tomorrow we start setting things right." Grace didn't understand what setting things right meant, but the confidence in Clara's tone wrapped around her like a protection blanket. It was the first time in days she'd felt a hint of control. When Clara left, the room fell quiet, except for the ticking clock. Harriet covered Grace with a blanket and whispered, "You're safe here, dear. Don't let that man steal your peace too." Grace lay still, staring at the ceiling as the rain eased outside, but deep down, she knew peace wouldn't last. The world she'd built with Ethan was cracking, and something bigger, something hidden, was already shifting beneath it. Rain still fell softly over the city, but in a tall glass building downtown, the storm hadn't ended, it had just changed form. Lightning flashed through the office windows of Clara Reed, the sharp, unflinching lawyer who had quietly taken Grace's case. Her phone buzzed again, the fifth call that hour, but she ignored it. Papers lay spread across her desk, names, accounts, trust documents. At the center sat a faded folder marked Robert Gray Trust Confidential. "Activate Clause 42, Clara said into the phone, her tone low and steady. "Yes, tonight, before he touches anything." On the other end, a voice hesitated. "Ma'am, that clause hasn't been used in over a decade." "Are you sure?" "I'm certain," Clara interrupted. "Grace Miller's safety depends on it, and make sure her name doesn't appear in any traceable report. Ethan Miller must never know this came from her." She ended the call, exhaled deeply, then leaned back in her chair. The office was silent except for the sound of rain against glass. She looked out at the city, 1,000 lights flickering like secrets. Clara had seen many women destroyed by prideful men, but something about Grace felt different. Her pain wasn't just grief, it was the quiet strength of someone whose storm hadn't fully begun. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. Her young assistant, Anna Blake, stepped in, clutching a stack of papers. She was 24, bright-eyed, new to the grum, firm and fiercely loyal to Clara. "Ma'am, these are the authorization files from the trust department. Do you want me to file them under family clause?" Clara shook her head. "No. Label them under emergency property protection. Keep them sealed. And Anna," she paused, her voice softening, "not a word to anyone. Not even to Mrs. Miller. She doesn't need to know yet." Anna frowned. "She doesn't know what we're doing for her?" Clara's gaze darkened. "Not yet. If she knows, she might panic. The less she says, the safer she is. There are powerful people around Ethan. They'll come looking if they sense a move." Anna hesitated, sensing danger but trusting Clara's judgment. "Understood." She slipped out, leaving the faint scent of ink and rain behind her. Clara turned back to her computer and typed rapidly, initiating the final lock sequence, the legal freeze, on Ethan's shared assets. A message blinked across her screen. "Transaction secured. Authorization complete. Funds inaccessible pending review. She sat back, her pulse steady but eyes cold. Sleep well, Grace, she murmured to herself. You're safe now, even if you don't know it yet. Then her phone rang again, this time from an unknown number. She answered. A deep voice spoke on the other end. Miss Reed, this is Trevor Miles, partner at Miller Holdings. Ethan's been making strange withdrawals all week. He's asking about the trust linked to his wife's name. Should we be concerned? Clara's fingers froze over her keyboard. Her expression didn't change, but her voice dropped an octave. No, Mr. Miles, everything's under control. But I'd advise you to keep quiet, for your own sake. She ended the call and stared at the glowing city outside. The storm was spreading faster than she expected. In that moment, a single thought crossed her mind. If Ethan kept digging, someone innocent might get hurt before he ever realized what had been taken from him. The scream tore from Grace's throat before she even knew it was hers. She woke up, drenched in sweat, clutching her blanket as her heart raced. The nightmare had come again. Ethan's voice, the slap, the cold rain, Sophia's mocking smile. It always ended with her standing in the dark, alone, holding the broken house key. Breathe, Grace, came a calm, steady voice. You're safe here. She looked up to see Dr. Samuel Hayes, her therapist, a tall man in his 50s, with kind eyes behind silver-rimmed glasses. His voice carried no judgment, only warmth. You're in my office, Grace. No one can hurt you here, he said softly. The room was quiet except for the slow ticking of a wall clock. Rain pattered gently against the window, the same rhythm that had once haunted her. But now, in this small office, it sounded almost peaceful. Grace wiped her tears and took a shaky breath. It's been 3 weeks, she whispered. But it still feels like he's right there shouting at me. Dr. Hayes nodded. That's normal. Trauma isn't just memory. It's the echo of what you survived. Tell me, when you hear his voice in your head, what do you feel? Grace hesitated. Shame. Like I wasn't enough. Like everything he said was true. The doctor leaned forward. And what does the voice of Grace say? She frowned slightly. I don't know anymore. That's what we're here to find, he said. You've been told for years that silence keeps peace, but silence also buries truth. Today, we start digging. For the first time, Grace didn't cry when she spoke about the slap. She told him how it burned, how the room had gone still, how everyone, even Sophia, seemed to enjoy watching her break. And when she finished, her voice no longer trembled. Doctor, Hayes listened, then said, Grace, your silence didn't mean weakness that night. It meant survival. You endured something cruel without letting it change who you are. That takes strength most people never understand. His words sank deep. Something fragile inside her began to harden, not in bitterness, but in strength. When the session ended, Anna Blake, Clara's young paralegal, waited outside with 2 paper cups of coffee. She smiled shyly. Doctor, Hayes said caffeine helps recovery days. Grace smiled faintly, taking the cup. You don't even know me, and yet you care. Anna shrugged. Mrs. Reed says good women deserve good people around them. And I think she's right. They sat together under the awning outside the building, watching cars pass by. Grace looked at the city skyline, once terrifying, now just distant. For the first time since that night, she didn't feel invisible. But as they stood to leave, Anna's phone buzzed. She glanced down and froze. The message was from Clara. Her eyes darted nervously toward Grace. Everything okay? Grace asked softly. Anna quickly locked the screen. Yeah, just office stuff. But her voice trembled slightly. What she didn't say was that Clara's message had read, Ethan's lawyers are making moves. Keep her calm. Don't tell her yet. Grace smiled weakly, unaware of the gathering storm. I think I'm finally learning to breathe again, she said. But far away, in Ethan's world, something was about to explode. Music thundered through the ballroom. Cameras flashed. Laughter echoed, and glasses clinked like coins in a vault. At the center of it all stood Ethan Miller, dressed in a tailored suit, his arm around Sophia Lane, who wore a glittering gold gown that caught every light. The crowd cheered as Ethan raised his glass high. To new beginnings, he declared proudly, and to those of us who had the courage to let go of the past. Laughter erupted, loud, empty, cruel. Sophia leaned in, her lips brushing his ear. "You're the talk of the night, darling. They adore your boldness." Ethan grinned, loving every second. "They should. I traded dead weight for a diamond." Across the room, Trevor Miles, Ethan's longtime business partner, forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He whispered to another man, "He's burning bridges faster than he builds them." "Maybe," the man replied, "but he's still rich enough to drown the smoke." Ethan's laughter rang louder than the music. "Grace must be watching this from her little hole somewhere," he sneered. "Serves her right for thinking she could stand next to me." Sophia chuckled, pretending innocence. "You really think she's watching?" "She's nothing without me," Ethan said confidently. "I've locked her out of everything. House, bank, reputation. She's finished." Sophia's smile wavered, but she quickly hid it behind her champagne glass. Deep down, she remembered the fear in Grace's eyes that night, and something about Ethan's confidence made her uneasy. Still, greed drowned her doubt. "Then let's toast to your victory," she purred. Meanwhile, across the ballroom, journalists snapped photos, whispering to each other. "Isn't that his ex-wife's friend?" one murmured. "This looks bad." But Ethan didn't care. His arrogance glowed brighter than the chandeliers. Later that night, outside the ballroom, Sophia waited while Ethan spoke to reporters. She checked her phone, a message from Felicia Grant, her old friend, and the self-proclaimed queen of manipulation. "Don't get too comfortable. Men like Ethan love the spotlight until it burns them." Sophia frowned but deleted the text. She wasn't ready to face the truth, not yet. Ethan stepped outside, waving goodbye to the cameras. "Let them talk," he said. "The world loves a scandal when it isn't their own." They drove home in silence. The mansion glimmered in the distance, but something in Ethan's world was already beginning to flicker. When they arrived, he poured himself a drink and leaned back in his chair. "To freedom," he muttered, taking a long sip. Sophia sat opposite him, her voice low. "You really think Grace will never come back?" Ethan chuckled darkly. "She couldn't if she tried. Everything she ever touched is under my control." Just then, his phone buzzed. He frowned and looked at the screen. A message from his accountant read, "Urgent. Minor delay detected in transaction processing. Please verify authorization." Ethan shrugged it off and tossed the phone aside. "Glitches happen," he said carelessly. Sophia smiled, but something in her gut twisted. The night that had begun with pride ended with an uneasy silence, a silence heavy with the weight of what was coming. And far away, in a quiet apartment, Grace Miller sat by her window, calm and unaware of the chaos slowly weaving toward him. The next morning, the sun rose over the Miller mansion like gold painted on glass, perfect on the outside, hollow inside. Sophia Lane stormed into the study, heels striking hard against the marble floor. "Ethan," she snapped, waving a stack of papers, "your accountant hasn't processed the transfers I asked for. I told him I needed those funds today." Ethan looked up from his laptop, irritated. "You're not touching my business accounts. I'll handle the money." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Our money, you mean? You promised me security, remember?" Their argument was loud enough to draw the attention of Trevor Miles, Ethan's longtime partner, who had arrived unannounced. He paused at the doorway, watching the tension unfold. Trevor was a man who smiled often but trusted no one, especially not Ethan. Sophia turned sharply toward him. "Maybe you can tell me, Trevor, what kind of businessman keeps his fiancée waiting for access to her own card?" Trevor chuckled dryly. "That's between you two. But if you're both this desperate for cash, maybe Miller Holdings isn't doing as well as the papers say." Ethan shot him a glare. "Careful, Trevor. You forget who signs your checks." Trevor smirked, stepping closer. "Oh, I remember. I just wonder how long those checks will keep clearing." He turned to leave but paused by the door. "People talk, Ethan. Whispers about missing transactions, glitches in your system. I'd look into that before bragging at another party." The door closed behind him with a soft click that felt like a warning. Sophia crossed her arms. "What glitches?" Ethan rolled his eyes. "Technical nonsense. I'm meeting with the bank later. Probably some lazy intern made a mistake." But Sophia wasn't convinced. Later that afternoon, she met Felicia Grant, her friend, and constant schemer at a quiet cafe downtown. Felicia, sharp-tongued and beautifully dangerous, sipped her espresso and said, "You're letting him run circles around you, Sophia. If he really loves you, he'd give you access to everything. Men like him only respect those who take. Sophia hesitated. He's proud. I just need time. Felicia leaned in. You don't need time. You need leverage. Find the numbers. Find the codes. If you don't take control now, Grace will crawl back into the picture, and he'll drop you like old news. Sophia flinched at the name. Grace is gone. He hates her. Felicia smirked. Men always hate what they fear. Think about it. The idea settled in Sophia's mind like poison wrapped in sugar. By evening, she was back at the mansion, pretending calm. Ethan, she said sweetly, pouring him a drink. Let's check those accounts together. I'm curious how your empire runs. Ethan laughed, oblivious. You wouldn't understand. Sophia smiled not kindly. Try me. As Ethan talked about stocks and investments, Sophia's eyes drifted to the open laptop screen on his desk. Numbers, codes, accounts. Her fingers twitched. Down the hall, the phone rang. Ethan answered impatiently. What now? A voice on the other end said, Mr. Miller, this is your banker. We're detecting unusual errors with your authorization network. Several transactions have failed. Ethan froze. Failed? What do you mean failed? The line went dead. Sophia stared at him, unease crawling up her spine. For the first time, the great Ethan Miller looked afraid. Outside, the wind began to howl through the tall palm trees, rattling the windows, a whisper of chaos on its way. Ethan Miller's shout rattled the entire office floor. What do you mean the transfer failed again? His hand slammed against the polished desk, sending papers flying. I moved $10 million last week. Where is my money? Across from him, the senior banker stammered through the speakerphone. Sir, the funds are there, but the system is flagging all outgoing transactions as restricted. It says the authorization is frozen. Frozen? Ethan repeated, his voice low and dangerous. By who? We're not sure. The freeze came through a legal channel. It appears legitimate. Ethan's blood ran cold. That's impossible. I am the account holder. The line went silent. Then the banker said quietly, Not exactly, sir. It's a joint trust. Grace Miller's name is still on the clause. Ethan's jaw clenched. Grace! She's nothing. She has no power over my accounts. He grabbed his phone and began dialing furiously. Sophia rushed into the office, her heels echoing like warnings. Ethan, calm down. You're shouting so loud the guards downstairs can hear you. He ignored her. Trevor, get in here now. Moments later, Trevor Miles appeared, sweat beading on his forehead. He had been avoiding Ethan's calls all week, sensing trouble. What's going on? He asked carefully. Ethan threw the phone at him. That's what's going on. My funds are blocked. The bank says it's a legal freeze, something about a Wangri. Clause under Grace's name. You handle finance. Fix it. Trevor's eyes widened. A legal freeze. Ethan, that's serious. You can't just... I said fix it, Ethan barked. Call whoever you have to. Sophia hovered near the doorway, her usual confidence cracking. Maybe it's just a mistake. Ethan turned on her, rage flashing in his eyes. Don't speak to me about mistakes. You wanted access, didn't you? You pushed for transfers, you asked for codes, and now this happens. Did you touch anything? Sophia's face flushed. You think I'd do this? I stood by you while your wife ran off crying. Don't you dare blame me. Trevor stepped between them. Enough. Shouting won't unfreeze the money. He lowered his voice. But listen, if this clause came from Grace's name, it means it was triggered through a trust. Maybe she had something set up years ago. Maybe it activated automatically. Ethan blinked, stunned. A trust? She didn't even handle our bills without asking me. Trevor frowned. Are you sure about that? Silence filled the office. For the first time, Ethan's arrogance slipped into fear. He sank into his chair, breathing hard. Find out everything. Every signature, every clause, every lawyer who ever touched that trust. Trevor nodded grimly. I'll bring in someone who can trace it, a forensic accountant. But Ethan, he hesitated. If this was done legally, you may not like what we find. Ethan looked up, eyes burning. Then we'll undo it, whatever it takes. Outside, thunder rolled across the city skyline, as if the heavens themselves were warning him to stop digging. But pride drowned out reason. Sophia watched him from the doorway, unease twisting in her gut. Ethan, she whispered, what if Grace didn't just walk away? He didn't answer. He just stared out the window toward the horizon, where a storm was forming. Find me answers, or you're all fired. Ethan's roar shook the glass walls of his conference room. The air was thick with tension, his employees frozen in fear. Documents lay scattered across the table: balance sheets, transaction logs, and failed transfer reports. For a man who once commanded millions, Ethan now looked cornered. Into the chaos walked Marcus Hale, a forensic accountant with a calm, calculating presence. He was known for one thing: uncovering the truth no matter how deeply buried. Behind him trailed Mia Foster, his young assistant, curious and sharp, a notepad already in hand. "Mr. Miller," Marcus said coolly, taking a seat, "I've reviewed your financial structure. Something's very wrong here." Ethan slammed his fist on the table. "I know it's wrong. I want to know who did it." Marcus opened a folder and slid a few papers forward. "These signatures are from your joint trust account, the one created 10 years ago under your wife's name. See this clause?" He pointed to a small section of legal text. "It's labeled Emergency Protection Activation. It automatically freezes funds if abuse, coercion, or illegal transfers are detected against one beneficiary." Ethan's face turned pale. "That's absurd. Grace couldn't have done this. She's not that clever." Marcus looked up, unimpressed. "Maybe she didn't have to be. Whoever her legal representative was, they were." Ethan gritted his teeth. "You're saying someone helped her?" "Yes," Marcus replied. "A lawyer named Clara Reed initiated the lock procedure. She cited a clause signed years ago by your late uncle-in-law, Robert Gray." Trevor leaned forward, stunned. "Robert Gray? The philanthropist? He died ages ago." "Exactly," Marcus said. "But his foresight is still protecting her. He left Grace a legal safety net you probably never knew existed." Mia looked up from her notes. "It's actually brilliant," she said softly. "The clause was hidden in a trust addendum. It only activates if physical or emotional harm is reported, and once it's triggered, no one can reverse it without court approval." Ethan's breathing grew ragged. "So you're telling me I can't touch my own money?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Not a cent. Not unless she lifts the freeze or the court rules otherwise." Sophia stepped forward, her voice trembling. "But she doesn't even know. Grace doesn't know how to fight like this. Someone's lying." Marcus closed the folder calmly. "Whether she knows or not doesn't matter. The system already chose a side." The words hung in the air like a sentence. Ethan dropped into his chair, silent, his eyes dark with disbelief. Everything he had mocked Grace for her gentleness, her silence had become the very thing undoing him. Trevor looked uneasy. "Ethan, maybe we should back off and wait. If this goes public..." Ethan cut him off, voice rising again. "Public? You think I care about that? No one humiliates me. Not my wife. Not anyone." Marcus stood. "Mr. Miller, I suggest you stay calm. Because if the court gets wind of this investigation before you do, the damage will go beyond your accounts." "What's that supposed to mean?" Ethan barked. Marcus met his gaze, cold and steady. "It means someone's already watching you." The room went silent. Ethan looked toward the window, and for the first time in his life, he felt small under the city skyline. The phone hit the wall before anyone could stop him. "They froze my accounts, Trevor." Ethan's voice thundered through the penthouse like a storm. "The contract's gone, the investor's gone. How could this happen?" He kicked over a chair, sending it crashing into the glass coffee table. Shards scattered like the empire he once ruled. Sophia flinched, clutching her robe. "Ethan, calm down," she pleaded. "You're scaring me." "Scared?" He spat, veins visible in his neck. "You should be scared. We're broke." Outside, thunder rolled over the city skyline. Inside, chaos reigned. Trevor Miles stood frozen by the door, phone in hand, sweat beading on his brow. "Ethan," he said cautiously, "I just got word from the board. Victor Stone has called an emergency press conference. He's buying out your major contracts. If this goes through, Miller Holdings is done." Ethan spun around. "Victor?" he hissed. "That vulture? He's been circling for months." Trevor nodded grimly. "And now he smells blood." Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. "But the company's still ours, right? We can fix this." Trevor shook his head. "Without liquidity, you can't even pay your employees next week." Victor already filed to absorb your shipping line and manufacturing division. The press will have the story by morning. Ethan's chest rose and fell in wild, uneven bursts. He stormed to his laptop, typing furiously, but the screen blinked, a red warning. Access denied, account locked pending legal inquiry. No, 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 no. He slammed the keyboard. This can't be happening. Trevor's voice trembled. It's over, Ethan. You can't buy your way out this time. For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the steady ticking of the wall clock. Ethan's reflection in the glass wall looked like a ghost of the man he once was. Powerful, proud, untouchable. Now, he looked lost, small. Sophia turned away, tears pooling in her eyes. I didn't sign up for this. You promised me security. Ethan's glare snapped to her. Don't you dare walk out now. You wanted this life. You wanted me. Sophia's voice hardened. I wanted the man you pretended to be. Not this. The words hit him harder than any slap. Trevor looked between them and took a careful step back. You both need to think clearly. The lawyers are circling, and Judge Linda Howard has issued an order to review all your financial dealings. This isn't just a freeze, it's an investigation. Ethan froze. What? Trevor nodded. Fraud allegations. It looks like someone filed a complaint against you. Anonymous. Sophia's eyes widened. Anonymous? You think? But she stopped herself. Ethan's face had already darkened. Grace, he muttered under his breath. It's her. She's behind this, Sophia whispered. You don't know that. He looked at her sharply. Oh, I know. Only she had reason to destroy me this completely. Outside, lightning struck so close that the windows trembled. Ethan turned toward the rain-soaked skyline, eyes full of fury. If she wants war, he said, I'll give her one. Behind him, Trevor's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, a live alert from the news feed. Victor Stone announces takeover of Miller Holdings amid financial scandal. Trevor swallowed hard, looking up at Ethan, who hadn't yet seen it. The empire had officially fallen. Don't touch me, Ethan! Sophia's voice cracked through the mansion like shattered glass. She shoved his hand away, her mascara streaking down her face. You've destroyed everything. We have nothing left. Ethan's rage flared. We? There was never a we. You were just supposed to stand beside me, not complain like a child when things got hard. Sophia's eyes blazed. You promised me stability. You said you'd protect me. But all you've done is drag me into your mess. Lightning flashed through the windows, throwing their reflections across the marble floor, two people drowning in the wreckage of greed. Empty bottles littered the table, silent witnesses to a love built on convenience and pride. Ethan grabbed a glass and hurled it against the wall. Don't you dare blame me for your choices. You wanted the spotlight, now enjoy the ashes. Sophia flinched, then squared her shoulders. You think I'm staying here to sink? With you? Not a chance. Before Ethan could speak, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and quickly turned away, but he caught the flicker of a name, Anthony Rivers. Who's that? Ethan demanded. Sophia's silence was answer enough. Don't lie to me, Sophia, he shouted. You think I don't see it? The late nights, the phone calls, the new dress you borrowed for meetings that never existed. Sophia's voice dropped to a cold whisper. You think you own me, Ethan. But I've learned something: when a ship starts sinking, the smartest ones swim first. He stared at her, disbelief breaking into anger. You're leaving me? After everything I gave you? You didn't give me anything, she said quietly. Grace did. Every luxury you ever flaunted came from her foundation, her loyalty, her trust, her name. You just abused it. Her words hit him like bullets. For the first time, Ethan's face softened, not out of guilt, but fear. You'll regret this, he warned. When I'm back on top, you'll come crawling. She laughed, bitter and broken. Back on top? You're finished. The world already knows. Victor Stone just announced your downfall, and the board's cutting you out completely. You're not coming back, Ethan, not this time. The sound of her heels echoed as she walked toward the door. Where are you going? He demanded. She paused, glancing over her shoulder. Anthony has business overseas. Maybe I'll join him for a while. He says a woman like me deserves better than crumbs. Ethan clenched his fists. You think he'll keep you? He'll use you and toss you aside. Sophia smiled faintly. Then I guess we'll finally have something in common. The door slammed. Silence. Ethan sank into a chair, chest heaving, surrounded by shadows and unpaid bills. Every sound, the ticking clock, the distant thunder reminded him of his collapse. His phone buzzed again. Another notification. He picked it up slowly. New article. Anthony Rivers confirms relationship with Sophia Lane Miller's former mistress. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The photo beneath the headline showed Sophia smiling beside Anthony. Diamond earrings glinting under flashlights, the same earrings he had bought her months ago. He crushed the phone in his hand. "They'll all pay for this," he growled. But upstairs, in a quiet office across town, Clara Reed received an alert on her screen, a report of new financial movement under Sophia's name. She frowned. "This might complicate things," she murmured. Because what Clara knew and Ethan didn't was that Sophia's betrayal was only the beginning of something far bigger. "Miss Reed, we need to talk. Now." The words cut through the hum of Clara Reed's office like a blade. Marcus Hale, the forensic accountant, stood in her doorway, eyes sharp, folder in hand. Behind him, Mia Foster followed quietly, clutching her notepad, her face pale with shock. Clara didn't look up from her desk. "You're early, Marcus. I assume this is about Ethan Miller?" He stepped forward, slamming the folder down. "Don't play calm with me. I found something, and you'd better explain it." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Explain what?" Marcus flipped the file open. "The freeze order. You didn't just block Ethan's assets, you activated a trigger clause tied to Robert Gray's trust. This wasn't protection. It was premeditated control. Grace Miller had no idea her husband's empire would collapse this way." Clara leaned back, her face unreadable. "And yet, here we are. A woman safe, a tyrant exposed." Mia stepped closer. "But she didn't even know you filed it, Miss Reed. She thinks you just gave her legal help." Clara's eyes softened. "And that's all she needs to believe. The less she knows, the safer she is." Marcus's voice hardened. "You had no right to go behind your client's back." Clara stood, her calm composure turning to quiet steel. "I had every right. Robert Gray created that trust to protect Grace in case of abuse. Ethan's slap triggered the legal definition of harm. That was the signal. I didn't touch a cent of their money. The trust did exactly what it was designed to do." Marcus hesitated, scanning the documents again. "You're saying it was automatic?" "Yes," Clara replied. "Robert saw this coming years ago. He left her a gift hidden inside her pain. Grace didn't freeze his money, love did. The kind that protects even when forgotten." Silence filled the room. The only sound was the rain tapping gently against the windows. Mia blinked, whispering, "That's beautiful." Clara smiled faintly. "No, Mia. That's justice, the quiet kind the world rarely notices." But Marcus wasn't done. "You realize what happens now, don't you? The court will ask for documentation. Once this comes out, the press will know you orchestrated the freeze. They'll twist it into a revenge plot." Clara's expression darkened. "Then let them. I don't work for headlines. I work for truth." At that moment, Anna Grace's young paralegal friend burst into the office, breathless. "Miss Reed, you need to see this." She held up her phone, screen glowing with a news alert. Marcus took it and read aloud, his tone low. "Breaking. Ethan Miller files lawsuit against Grace Miller, claiming fraudulent asset seizure and emotional abuse." Mia gasped. "He's turning it around on her?" Clara's jaw tightened. "He's desperate. Men like him always are when power slips away." Marcus looked up. "Then what's your next move?" Clara walked to the window, staring out at the gray city skyline. "He wants a public fight. We'll give him one in a courtroom he can't control." Lightning flashed outside, casting sharp light across her face. And far away, in a modest apartment, Grace looked up from her evening tea as her phone buzzed with the same headline. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes, once full of fear, now carried quiet strength. She whispered to herself, "If he wants war, then he'll finally meet the woman he created." "Order in the court!" Judge Linda Howard's gavel struck hard against the wood, echoing through the packed courtroom. Reporters filled the back rows, cameras waiting like vultures. Ethan Miller stood at the plaintiff's table, polished suit barely hiding the tremor in his hands. Across from him sat Grace Miller, calm, composed, dressed in a simple cream blouse and black skirt, dignity wrapped in silence. The world was watching. Ethan's lawyer rose first. Your Honor, my client has been unfairly stripped of access to his own funds tied to the success of his company. We intend to prove Mrs. Miller conspired with her attorney to defraud him. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Grace remained still, her fingers laced together on the table. Clara Reed, her lawyer, leaned in and whispered, "Stay calm. Truth speaks louder than noise." Judge Howard nodded. "Proceed." Ethan took the stand, his voice trembling between anger and fear. "She betrayed me. She froze everything. My accounts, my business, my life, all gone because she wanted revenge." Clara rose slowly, eyes sharp. "Mr. Miller," she said, her tone measured, "isn't it true that on the night of March 14th you struck your wife and forced her out of her home?" Ethan stiffened. "That's a lie." Clara turned to the evidence screen. A video played a shaky clip taken by Karen Lewis, the neighbor. Ethan's voice filled the courtroom. "Give me the house key and the code to that 10 million. You're useless." The room went silent except for the faint sound of Grace's cry in the recording. Judge Howard's expression hardened. "Mr. Miller, would you like to explain this?" Ethan's lawyer stammered. "Your Honor, emotions were high. This doesn't prove financial misconduct." Clara pressed on. "No, but it proves motive." After years of control and abuse, Grace Miller's late guardian, Robert Gray, ensured she could never be left defenseless. His trust clause was triggered by her injury that night, legally freezing the funds under court protection. Gasps spread again. Ethan's face turned crimson. "That's manipulation," he shouted. Clara faced him directly. "No, Mr. Miller. That's foresight. You built your empire on her back, and now it stands on her name." Grace finally looked up. Her voice, calm but steady, filled the silence. "I never wanted revenge, Ethan. I only wanted peace. But peace can't live where cruelty rules." Ethan slammed the desk. "You ruined me!" Judge Howard's gavel struck again. "Enough!" she thundered. "Mr. Miller, you ruined yourself. This court will not reward violence or greed. The trust stands, the freeze remains, and your actions will be investigated for fraud and abuse." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Ethan's shoulders sagged as the bailiff stepped closer, hand resting on his arm. Grace rose quietly. She didn't look at him with hatred, only pity. "The house key you once demanded," she said softly, reaching into her purse. She placed it on the table between them. "You can have it back. It used to open our home. Now it opens your memory." Ethan stared at the small piece of metal, tears burning behind his eyes. The cameras clicked like thunder. Judge Howard's voice echoed one last time. "This court is adjourned." As Grace walked out into the sunlight, Anna and Clara by her side, she felt something she hadn't in months: freedom. Yet even as she smiled faintly, Clara's phone buzzed with a new message. Her expression changed. She turned to Grace and said quietly, "There's one last thing you need to see." The heavy courtroom doors burst open. "Detective Brian Scott, Metropolitan Police," the voice announced, deep and commanding. Every head turned as the tall, broad-shouldered detective strode in, coat dripping from the rain, a folder clutched tightly in his hand. His badge gleamed under the overhead lights. "Your Honor," he said firmly, addressing Judge Linda Howard, "we have new evidence in the Miller case: financial misconduct, identity forgery, and corporate fraud. Ethan Miller is officially under investigation." Ethan's face drained of color. "What?" he stammered. "This is outrageous. You can't just walk in here," and Detective Scott cut him off, laying the folder on the judge's desk. Bank records, phone transcripts, and falsified invoices linking Miller Holdings to offshore accounts under Sophia Lane's name, accounts Mr. Miller personally approved. The courtroom erupted in gasps. Sophia, seated near the back, froze in horror. "That's not possible," she whispered. "Anthony," said he. Judge Howard slammed her gavel. "Silence in the court," Detective Scott continued, unshaken. "Evidence also shows an attempt to transfer remaining company funds after the court-ordered freeze, a direct violation of the legal ruling. We have enough to seize his assets and charge him immediately." Ethan lunged forward, his voice breaking. "It wasn't me, it was her. She used me." He pointed at Sophia, who now stood trembling. "She said she could fix everything." Sophia's tears streaked her makeup. "I didn't, Ethan, I swear." But the detective's voice sliced through their panic. "Mr. Miller, Miss Lane, You're both coming with us. The rest will be handled by the Financial Crimes Unit. The sound of handcuffs clicking was deafening. Ethan struggled, shouting as he was pulled away. Grace! You can't do this to me! You were my wife! You owe me! Grace, standing near the exit with Clara and Anna, turned slowly to face him. Her expression was calm, almost gentle. No, Ethan, she said quietly. I don't owe you anything. You taught me the cost of silence, and now I know the value of peace. Ethan's eyes filled with tears, his arrogance finally gone. Please, Grace. But she only stepped closer and said the words that ended the storm. I already forgave you the day you hit me, but forgiveness doesn't mean I'll walk back into the fire. He lowered his head as officers led him away. Sophia cried out for help, but Anthony Rivers, her new lover, had already disappeared, his number disconnected, his promises gone. The reporters rushed forward, cameras flashing. Grace stood tall, the house key, that same symbol of her past, glinting in her hand. She placed it on the courthouse steps and whispered, Some doors were never meant to reopen. Clara smiled softly beside her. It's over, Grace. You can finally live. Grace looked up at the sky, now clearing after the storm. No, she said, her tone serene. It's just beginning. Behind her, Detective Scott watched quietly, respect in his eyes. For what it's worth, he said, your uncle would be proud. You turned pain into justice. Grace nodded faintly. Justice isn't revenge, Detective. It's truth given a voice. As she walked away, the crowd parted, whispering her name like a quiet anthem. But just as the sunlight broke through the clouds, Clara's phone buzzed again. Her eyes narrowed as she read the message. Anonymous tip. There's still one account under Miller's name untouched. She turned to Grace. You might want to see this. Grace paused, her expression calm but knowing. Then maybe the past isn't finished with us yet. 1 year later, sunlight poured through the tall windows of a glass building that stood proudly in the heart of the city, its name etched in silver across the front. The House Key Foundation. Inside, Grace Miller stood before a crowd of journalists, philanthropists, and survivors. Women, men, and children whose stories mirrored her own. Her calm voice filled the hall. The house key once symbolized control, silence, and fear, she began. But today it stands for something new, a door no one can lock again. Applause rose like thunder. Cameras flashed, but Grace didn't flinch. She had learned that attention wasn't the same as worth. Dressed simply in ivory and gold, she radiated quiet confidence, the kind that comes from surviving storms and learning to dance in the rain. At her side stood Clara Reed, smiling proudly, and Anna Blake, now managing the foundation's outreach programs. Even Dr. Samuel Hayes, her therapist, sat in the front row, pride glimmering in his eyes. When the applause settled, Clara stepped up beside Grace. Tell them how it started, she said softly. Grace nodded. After the trial, the detectives uncovered a final hidden account one Ethan didn't even know existed. It was registered in my name through my late uncle's trust, designed to unlock once justice was served. I used every cent to build this place for those who were silenced like I once was. She paused, her gaze moving across the audience, faces full of tears, hope, and courage. We offer shelter, therapy, education, and second chances. Because sometimes the keys that were taken from us are the very ones that set us free. In the back of the room, a small girl clutched her mother's hand, holding a silver keychain with the foundation's emblem, a heart shaped like a door lock. Grace smiled at her. Outside the building, a bronze statue stood in the garden. It was of a woman holding a house key up to the sky, engraved with the words, "Silence is not surrender. Forgiveness is not weakness. Grace's strength." As the event ended, Grace stepped out into the sunlight. Reporters tried to stop her for questions, but she waved them off politely. She wanted quiet now, the kind of quiet that heals. Harriet Cole, her elderly landlady from that rainy night, waited near the entrance. You did it, dear, she said warmly, hugging her. You turned the pain into purpose. Grace smiled. No, we did. Every hand that helped me opened another door. As she walked toward her car, she felt a cool breeze brush against her face, the same kind that had carried her tears a year ago. Only this time, it carried peace. Behind her, the sun reflected off the foundation's glass walls, filling the street with golden light. Somewhere in a quiet prison cell miles away, Ethan Miller sat staring at an old newspaper photo of her. For the first time in his life, he wept not from loss, but from knowing he had destroyed the only woman who ever truly wished him well. Grace looked up at the sky and whispered, "Uncle Robert, we kept the promise." And as she turned away, the last line of her story, the one the world would remember, glowed on the foundation's entrance door. Where pain once ended, new beginnings are born.